Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 414, recorded August 5th, 2014, the Kardashian Free Zone. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV. Are you looking to upgrade your IT skills or prepare for certification? IT Pro TV offers engaging and informative tutorials now with Mac Management. Stream to your Roku, your computer, or your mobile device for 30% off the lifetime of your account. Go to itpro.tv/MacBreak and use the code MacBreak30. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code MacBreak. And by Hover.com. Hover's the best way to buy and manage domain names. It's simple, honest, and easy to use. For 10% off your first purchase, go to Hover.com and enter the promo code MBW8. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we talk about Macs incessantly, obsessively, and without let-up. Macs, iOS, that kind of thing. Here he is, Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times. How long have you been doing this show, Andy? Years.
2006?
Wow. Since before Justin TV.
Yes, when Justin TV was just like an 8-track that you plugged in, and every show would like start in the middle and then end like 10 minutes into the next show.
Rene, Ritchie on the other hand is a newbie, virtual
I'm
newbie.
a baby.
You've only been here a year.
Yeah, it'll be 2 years in October, I think.
2 years in October. Nice to have you from imore.com. And the reason I'm feeling a little nostalgic is because we got, just as I came in the door, we got word that Justin.tv has shuttered. Justin had renamed itself, I didn't even know this, in February to Twitch.tv. They founded Twitch, the gaming network. And, of course, the rumor is, I don't know if Google's confirmed it or not, that Google's going to buy Twitch.tv for $1 billion. $1 billion. And so, and that includes all the people and assets of Justin.tv. So I guess the feeling is, well, screw it. Why should we go to work tomorrow?
It's like that Dave Chappelle show where he kicks the shelf onto his old boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why should we come in? We're rich.
I'm rich.
I love that attitude. I only wish there had been like some sort of like letter or press conference that said, as you have heard in other online journals, I was just bought out by Google for $920 million, leaving me personally with a figure wealth of $12 million. Guess this is the point which I would say I look forward to working closely with the new Google team, but see ya.
See ya. And they say if you want to continue to broadcast, of course, you can create a Twitch.tv account, but be warned, not MacBreak Weekly. No. Anybody who doesn't do video game content is not welcome here. That's fine. I mean, we used in the past tense Justin TV, but we currently are also on Ustream and BitGravity and FlowSoft, and there are others. So there's choices. That's good.
The internet goes on.
But they really did just drop the mic, didn't they? Just walked off stage. Because usually there's a period of, okay, we're going to give you a week to get your stuff or something. This is like, bam, we're out of here. They literally didn't come to work this morning.
I always wonder about what we don't know about the news. Whether it was you can't give people time to do X because we have to put in Y.
Yeah, that may be right.
Yeah,
right.
But you do worry about all the people who might still have content there that is now, okay, I actually got rid of that hard drive because I thought that I'd always have an archive of everything I did, but guess not.
Yeah. We used it for live streaming. We did not use it for archiving. So it's just one of the 3 or 4 things we used to stream live. So it's not a huge deal for us, but it's still, I have to feel like people who used it as their archive, I guess Chad did. It's kind of like, whoa.
See ya.
It's kind of a shocker. Anyway, thought I'd just mention that since it was the first bit of news when I came in today. There is another bit of news that just broke an hour ago. Apple's event for the iPhone, according to Code Red, John Pachkowski, is September 9th. Credible rumor, Rene? You're a rumor vetter.
So back in January, I wrote a piece called Apple Release Day Roulette, where I said the most likely date for the iPhone would be September 9th.
You named it!
10th. So, I mean, that is just because for the third year in a row, Apple has used the exact same week for this event.
Oh.
So I think that everything looks like it is lined up for that, and John has an excellent reputation, and it makes a lot of sense to do it that week for a variety of reasons.
Sure. The real question is how soon after that will the putative new iPhone be available? And
10 days if they hold the pattern. So it'll be the 19th.
Yeah, if they hold a pattern. And then we've heard some rumors that they might not. Credible?
The 4.7 sounds done. The 5.5 sounds much more iffy.
Yeah.
I think the limiting factor is going to be iOS 8. When do they feel confident about shipping it? And remember that we've seen nice velocity of developer betas, but still, as soon as we start to see more velocity about finished stuff where a lot of infrastructure is going to be back in place, that's when that's going to look about more like a day-and-date release than a, hey, we're announcing it and it's going to be shipping with iOS 7 because it's so good. We want to give people another 6 weeks to enjoy it.
Beta 5 of iOS 8 did come out a couple of days ago.
Yep.
And are there big differences? Is it? I am not using it. And
it's got a few UI tweaks. It does some things. It's not a major difference. It fixed a lot of issues that I had with the previous beta. One of the most interesting things is all that security stuff that we were talking about, all the backdoor stuff. Apple has begun to close that down in iOS 8 Beta 5.
Okay.
So like PCAP and stuff is no longer as easily accessible. All the wireless accessibility stuff has been closed down.
Jonathan Zdarsky, who of course was the bass player who revealed this information in his HopeX talk identifying backdoors, attack points, and surveillance mechanisms in iOS devices, blogged that a number of the high-value forensic services I'd outlined have now been disabled, including that packet sniffer that he was saying, why 600 million iOS devices have a packet sniffer built in? Well, maybe Apple listened. Apple's fixes are still a work in progress, Zdarsky writes. Not all of my security concerns have been addressed yet, but it does show Apple cares about the security of their product and likely wants to prevent their APIs from being abused by malicious hackers or government.
Which goes to the intent stuff, because there was some debate about, whether Apple did it on purpose or not. And this shows that, they're fixing it when they learn about it.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute now, though. It's not like they didn't learn about it. They're fixing it when we learned about it. They knew about it.
They didn't realize that it was as accessible as it was to people outside of, the intended purpose.
Right. They hadn't really thought about it, and they didn't realize it could be used in malicious ways.
Yeah, and it is a really complex system, and it's actually possible for things to have been put in years ago and then sort of forgotten about, not abandoned, but for people to not think that, oh, that's right, we were supposed to do something about that a few years ago. The fact that they turned this around so quickly indicates that it was more of, they didn't have to go up and down. Removing these things didn't cause anything else to break, either inside the phone or in Apple's process. So that tends to indicate that this is something they probably would have gotten around to removing if they had ever gotten down to that low on the to-do list before launching an operating system.
Yeah.
And a little bit of inside baseball, but there's a couple teams at Apple that have the ability to take your code away from you and fix it. And the security audit team is one of those teams.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So they could have gone across one infinite loop and said, hey,
give me that.
Give me that. Bam!
Yeah.
Hey, that's cool. You know what? That's a good... Is that a typical thing? Is that how companies often operate? That sounds like a...
They have they have several teams that do different things, and security and performance are both teams that can come in and make sure stuff is fixed.
Love that.
Yeah. So battery life, security, all that kind of stuff is super high priority.
They have the band hammer.
Yeah.
They can go in there and they got the right to do anything they want. I like that. I would think more companies should have that.
That's one of the reasons why the new campus is a big ring, so that when people screw up like that, they can say, run. All right, take a lap.
Take a lap. Drop and give me 20. I thought it was so they couldn't run away. You go that way, you go that way.
Like
we'll get them in the middle. Yeah. All right. So really not a big surprise that September 9th, that's exactly the date you thought in January. Yeah. So credible. That's a credible rumor. And you both feel that if iOS 8 is ready, we'll see those phones within 10 days. Typically, the event's Tuesday, and then they release it a week from Friday. Is that how it works?
Yeah, iOS comes out, I think, usually the Wednesday before, and then the phone comes out the Friday.
iOS 8 will work on all iPhones down to what?
4S.
4S.
It will work on the 4S? Okay.
Yes.
So if you have a 4 or lower, you're out.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's so damaging to Apple right now, and you can see it in recent articles about Apple deliberately sabotaging devices, is that if they don't make it backwards compatible, people think that they're withholding features, so you have to upgrade. And if they do, and it's designed for faster running devices, and you don't have a great experience, they think they're sabotaging your phone so that you're forced to buy another.
Can't win.
No.
It's not sabotage. It does. iOS 7 and iOS 8, though, do produce real stumbling blocks that previous versions didn't have, because now there's so many apps that I rely on every day on my iPad and on my iPhone where they are now just iOS 7 only. They're never going to run properly in iOS 6. I have to keep the old ones. And now there's new infrastructure that iOS 8 takes advantage of that if I've upgraded my Mac to Yosemite, that I'm going to have this new phone with this new operating system. So I can understand the pain point. I mean, when I really think that Apple's only social contract with its users is to make a useful phone for the life of the contract you're under for that phone. And so if you bought a 4S new while it was the hot phone, you got 2 years. Okay.
There's an article in Digital Trends to that effect. Dear conspiracy nuts, Apple doesn't cripple your old iPhone. Time does.
And perception. I mean, when you see a new iPhone and it's so powerful and moving, like your sense of velocity is like when you get off a highway and suddenly the streets seem very slow. It's the same kind of feeling.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, let's give some credit to people for wanting to get more than a couple of years out of a phone.
Right.
I mean, it would be really terrible if Apple were to do this sort of thing with desktop operating system releases, where I really think you have a right to expect a new Mac to be good for at least 5 or 6 years. And even if when you're out of service for the most recent operating system, you should also have the ability to at least have a current patched version available for download wherever you want to get it. So if this becomes a trend of Apple is only supporting phones from 2 years out, that would be a very bad trend. But there's so much going on, especially with iOS 7 and iOS 8, that they can't really be backwards compatible as far back as anybody would like.
It's not surprising that people think that Apple may also have some commercial interest in getting you to buy a new phone as quickly as possible.
The contrast was Android. Sorry.
I mean,
the contrast is Android. Go ahead.
Well, let me flip a coin here. Okay, go ahead, Rene Ritchie.
I will nod sagely, whatever you say.
I was going to say that the actual contrast is a lot of people complain that Android doesn't get updates as fast depending on the level of manufacturer customization, but you still have exactly the phone you bought for 2 or 3 years, and perceptibly that phone still works for you the way it was when you bought it. So it's funny that Apple provides these updates, but at the same time, some people would rather maybe they didn't.
All I was going to say is I think there's something to the idea that part of Apple's success is in making you want the next thing. This is not they don't sell candy bar phones to people who are going to say, I have 5 things I need to do with this phone. It does 8 things. I'm 3 up on the deal. I feel as though I've come away from this a winner. They are people who are going to say, even though the difference between the 4 and the 4S and the 5 were not really epic-shattering changes. You really have to go to the 5S when you talk about hardware that almost redefined what an iPhone is. So if you're going from the 4 to the 4S to the 5, a lot of Apple's ability to move those phones is the ability to convince someone, I know that you have the 4S, I know that you're really happy with the 4S, but oh my God, the 5. You are going to think that phone that is this much not as tall that you got in your pocket right now, oh, what a piece of crap, because when you get the screen that's this tall, wow, you know that you're living in the 21st. I mean, it's a lot of it is trying to get people to think that let me tell you about the chamfered edges, and let me tell you about the process of assembly and how we've created this brand new architecture to slim down. It's part of the seduction of, oh, but this one is new and it is lovely. I think that's maybe an advantage of like other models of phone. They're a little bit ugly, so you kind of only appreciate them for what they actually do for your life. You never get into a Gollum relationship with any Samsung phone. That's for sure.
I'll recuse myself from this conversation since I probably change phones every few months. So I don't know what it's like to have an old phone.
You see, if you didn't keep your phone in your shirt pocket when you use the bathroom, you wouldn't have to go through phones every 3 months.
No, I go through phones every 3 months because I always want to be trying them out so I can talk about them. Yes. So I have to. But it is the case that if iPhone 4 is 5 years old now. On the other hand, a 5-year-old computer, I think a lot of people would be pissed off if they felt like they couldn't use a 5-year-old computer.
And Apple kept selling the iPhone 4 until last year, and they still sell it in China, India.
Yep.
So it doesn't have to be 5 years old. It could be brand new.
Yeah, and it's with very low amounts of memory, which is further compounds the problem. Yeah. And some people in the chat room are saying just let people run older versions of the software. And that, again, is a trade-off because Apple touts how uniform their platform is, that I think some ridiculous number, over 90% of people are on iOS 7, and their security, it means they can security patch everybody all at once. So yes, they could let people run older versions of software, or they could prioritize updates and security, but there's always a tension between those things as well.
I mean,
not only that, but developers will tell you exactly how expensive it is to maintain old software. It's not just simply we'll leave it up on the server. Maintaining it and supporting it is just such a time suck for such little benefit. You're basically telling Apple, we want to devote a percentage of your time and labor force to maintaining people who really should just go to a phone store and buy a new phone at this point, or as far as they're concerned.
Is this also a testament to the fact that, unlike PCs, cell phones are in rapid development cycles? I mean, even in the earliest days of PCs, you didn't have to buy a PC every 2 years.
Yeah, I think it also reflects how well made the iPhone is. I mean, there are very few day-to-day carry plastic phones that I have that will last a couple of years. Whereas, I mean, I still have my original iPhone, and I carried it every day for 3 years, dropped it a few times, no problem. And even today, it fires up just fine running that, Fisher-Price version of iOS. But I think by the time a Samsung or some of the other HTC phones become 2 or 3 years old, it's starting to look like something that you might have Ebola in, and you might actually not want to be using on a day-to-day basis.
Can Apple solve this problem by offering low price or cheap old, 1-year-old or 2-year-old phones? Make a 5 be $0, and then people will upgrade? Wouldn't that solve it?
They sort of do already. I mean, the 5C is their $100 phone, and the 4S is their $0 phone. And this year, whatever the 5C version is, like they'll have a $0, $100, or $200 phone.
So you could be using you could trade up to a less expensive phone.
Yeah.
In the market with contracts.
If you don't mind being a serf for another 2 years.
I wonder if Apple's even kind of given up on trying to attack those other markets the way that other manufacturers can do, because the reason we make fun of cheap phones, but that's really what a lot of people really want to buy in certain parts of the world. And Apple is about as well set up to make a $49, $39 phone as GM is to design a car that they're going to sell 20,000 copies of. That's just not the way they run their business. And so it's just going to be.
Doesn't it look elitist though? I mean.
Well, not elitist. It's what they do really well. I really do like the automaker comparison, that there are shops that are really good at they can hand make 1,000 cars a year. And that's what they're optimized for. That's what they make really, really well. And that's one of the reasons why they have to sell these cars for $500,000, even $1 million, because that's the only way you can hand make a car and make a profit of it. And part of it is selling or overselling the style, selling or overselling the engineering, and giving people a whole experience. But then there needs to be GM, there needs to be Toyota, these people who can punch out $22,000 cars at the rate of 1 every 5 seconds. And it's not so much that Toyota is more proletarian than Bugatti. It's just that this is the business, this is the machinery that they set up to produce something that they want to make. I just think that if Apple were to ever make a $49 phone, I mean, a legitimate sticker price is $49 all over the world, brand new phone, that would be such a revolution for Apple that the hover car has to be about a week coming after that.
I wonder if the cost of high-end phones is dropping, though. I mean, I look at this. This is the OnePlus One, which is in every respect a high-end phone. 3 gigs of RAM. It's the Snapdragon 801, the fastest Qualcomm processor. It's a 1080p 5.5-inch screen. It's 20 hours battery life, 13 megapixel camera. You know, it's got all the specs, and it sells for $300 for 16 gigs and $350 for 64 gigs, unlocked out the door. Couldn't Apple do something like? I mean, it seems to me this if OnePlus One can do this, we're going to start seeing more of these, right?
it's a different business. Like Apple is entirely based on hardware sales. Everything that they do, there's one profit and loss across the entire company. So when you buy an iPhone, you're not just paying for the atoms the way that you are for other manufacturers who, you know, maybe use Android or don't have their own retail store, or don't provide something like Apple Care, or don't provide their own operating system. So when you're buying an iPhone, you're paying for iOS, you're paying for Apple Care, you're paying for Apple Retail, you're paying for all the free apps that Apple makes that go along with that. It's an entire, it sounds stupid, but it really is the entire ecosystem that you're paying for. And you're providing Apple with enough money that they can keep maintaining and building that ecosystem and buying other companies and doing all these things. And that's why it's really hard. You can't just take one element of a company like Xiaomi or like OnePlus and try to fit it to an Apple model or vice versa. Those companies are specifically designed almost like the way netbook companies were to make a commodity product that really.
But it's not commodity hardware. Well, so maybe they save a little bit on Android, but I mean,
sure, but they don't.
Is the $350 difference iOS 8?
iOS 8 and everything else that Apple does.
So you don't have a fingerprint reader on here.
And Apple also doesn't. They just don't compete. It's not that they don't believe people should have cheap phones. It's just they don't believe that they can do it well, so they stay out of that market. The same way BMW or Mercedes doesn't think that they can make the the Honda Accord or the Toyota.
These are good phones. These are not. This is not a Chevy.
Yeah, but you got to admit that the iPhone 5S was not the first phone that had a built-in fingerprint reader. It was just the first one that really did it well, and that's what you're paying for as for part of the sticker price, not the ability to source a component and write software and drivers to make it work, but the 3 or 4 or 5 years it took to reject ones that didn't work, to figure out to give the consumers version 6 of a piece of hardware, even though this is the first time it's appearing on a new phone.
I feel like just the way there's been pressure on Apple by bigger and bigger screens and bigger screen choices, there's going to be downward pressure on prices too because of look at the Moto X and the Moto G and the Moto. I mean,
they weren't in computers though, really. I mean, everyone kept saying that about
that's
computers.
True.
And it never
Apple didn't have to respond to that, did they?
Yeah.
But there was a perceptible difference between a Mac, in quality of hardware as well as in the software.
Well, one of the things with those phones too is a lot of the phones coming out of China right now, and this is part of the reason Lenovo bought Motorola, are not up to speed with intellectual property rights. And those phones will become more expensive when they have to start paying the licensing fees that are required to sell into North American,
the Nexus,
properly into North American.
Nexus 5 is cheap. That's a high-end phone. That's not...
It's subsidized by Google to be that cheap, though.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and the other thing is that Apple is not now and never has been and never will be the hog butcher to the world. They can pursue their style of making high quality hardware because they know that there is a market of people and businesses that can't afford their products, don't really appreciate that level of fit and finish. Neither do they need it, and that 80% of the market is being covered by other laptop makers. So they can basically skim off the top the 20% of people or the 15% of people that can afford it, that believe that they're going to be getting that money back in the long run, who do appreciate the way that a MacBook Air is put together versus the way that Windows Ultrabook is put together. So if a Apple major fan were to use this last magic genie wish to say, and I wish that Apple has no more competition and they're the only maker of computers, I really think that 5 years from now they would be making a $500 laptop and they would be making a $39 phone, because if they are the only market out there, they would quickly realize that they can't sell $1,000 laptops to the entire world. They really have to address that part of the market that up to now they just never have needed to bother with.
It's kind of funny because Apple has this reputation of being kind of a populist company for the people. And,
well, they are. I mean, they
but it's not. It's more like no more than the BMW is the company.
It's
for
popular
the people.
luxury.
Popular luxury.
But there's one really important thing to remember, and that is that this is not a new strategy. We've seen this strategy of low margin products, of commodity products, even with good specs, play out across the history of consumer electronics. And unfortunately, it's not always sustainable. Sometimes the profit margins get so low that the companies suffer. If you look at who made VCRs or who made DVD players, a lot of those companies don't exist anymore. And as a consumer, it's easy to think that the lowest price is in my best interest, but it's really the most sustainable price. And yeah, maybe Apple profit margins are ridiculously high. You can go buy Apple stock and get some of that money back if you really believe that. But it also allows them to have an incredibly sustainable business over decades. And I would like there to be more competition. I think Samsung is doing some of it at the mid-tier to high-tier brands, because it gives me faith that that company will be here to honor my warranties and to make me more great products next year, 5 years later, 10 years later.
I don't know what to make of this, but there's a Harvard graduate student, Laura Trucco, who did some research, and she found that more people search for iPhone slow on Google right around the same time as Apple launches a new model.
They explain that at the bottom of the article. They say that it's a lot of it has to do with perception, and then people misquoted that article to say Apple sabotages phone.
Right. I don't think that's evidence that Apple sabotages phones, but I think it is accurate. I mean, I believe that that's accurate. And who knows what they're looking for? Are they looking for solutions to a slow iPhone, or are they trying to see if their iPhone is slow so they can have an excuse to buy the new one? I'm not sure.
Or when you notice that, I mean, that when you update software, things will change, and then you're more loud. It's like when you buy a certain color car, suddenly everybody has that color car.
Yeah.
There's a lot of perceptive changes.
It really comes down to motivation. I don't think that Apple sabotages anything, but
no.
Where do they make their money from? They make their money from selling new hardware, and therefore they're going to steer everything towards that. I mean, if you want to service people that are more motivated towards keeping your hardware alive, that's why you switch from Android to Cyanogen mod, which is just free Android of people that have no interest in selling you phones whatsoever. That's how you can get a 4-year-old Android phone running something very, very modern. That's how you can get a laptop that's 10 years old running not Mac OS and not Windows, but an operating system that's very, very modern. You switch to Linux, to people who just want to give you a free operating system and kind of take joy in keeping your stuff alive. But it's not correct to try to expect that 10 years later you are still going to get you're still going to get the new version of Mac OS or the new version of iOS on anything.
I'm sure they have this discussion in the boardroom at the executive level, right? Because they have to make this decision. I mean, they're consciously making a decision not to sell an expensive phone, for instance.
Mm.
Go ahead, Rene.
Go, Rene. I was going to do.
I was going to say that usually it's their experience. It really is just a bunch of guys who put it on the device and they say this is not an Apple level experience. It's the same thing with video.
So they're not focused on price, or they're focused on the end user's experience, and they have a certain standard of quality they want the end user to have, and it must meet that. And that's really, I mean, I believe that. That's kind of what Steve's focus was, right?
Like if a 15 frames per second video is like, you can jailbreak and do that, but Apple is not going to put their name on 15 frames per second video. Right. We're only going to provide it to 30 frames and above. And that's what they do for the features. And when there's enough features like that, I believe that's what they do with the operating system.
It just happens that that's convenient for conveniently good for business as well.
Like a lot of the new iPhone stuff, it requires Bluetooth Low Energy. Like all the continuity stuff just requires Bluetooth Low Energy. And if you don't have that on the phone, you're not going to get all those features. You know, and then you start making decisions based on how much you're actually going to be able to use it.
Right.
Yeah. And I was going to ask a question that I'd like both of your opinions on. Do you think that Apple has the option of not releasing a new phone in any given calendar year? If they were to take this to we all quote this so many times that it seems like it's canon that, well, Apple is not afraid to delay something and not ship a feature until they think it's perfect. Could they simply say, you know what? We have a phone that's a little bit better, but same case, the processor's a little bit faster. It'll run the new operating system as fast as the current model. We thought that we just blow your socks off next year and continue to support the 5S for another year. Do they have the option of saying no new iPhone this year?
No, that would really upset people. It upset them when they moved the launch from June to September. Yeah. I think that people will get upset if they expect a new phone. Apple has now locked itself into a yearly release. And by the way, that's a slower release cycle than any other smartphone manufacturer, really, right?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Well, HTC does every year, right? But Samsung does one every month.
But that's different phones, like the Galaxy. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I'm saying that given that the Apple really has one phone, if they release one phone a year, if you could say that Samsung releases an update to the Galaxy S integer once a year, but they also will do like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 other phones. So they're certainly way productive.
So yearly is about right.
Well, I think it's actually not a hardware question, because when the iPhone 4S took 16 months to come out, that wasn't because of the hardware. They had the hardware ready. That was because iCloud and Siri took them that long to get done. And I think they could probably almost always bump the hardware in some ways. Even if it's just a small incremental update, they could have that hardware event. But if they commit themselves to something as big as iCloud again, or something as big as Siri, and it takes 16 months, they no longer have the luxury of pushing it to fall. They've already pushed it to fall. So that would push it to the next year. And not selling something means missing their biggest quarter, their holiday quarter, where people do want new things, which is why they've had like new colors on on iPods. You could have a red iPhone, maybe. It could be anything that they could do to make that seem like a holiday product. But I think it's the software that will be the constraint there, not the hardware.
But at the same time, don't anybody who bought an iPad 3 only to say, if I had waited 4 months, I would have gotten a Retina iPad that was so much better, some better memory, better everything. Those people had to have felt pretty minus that Apple felt the need to push out a second iPad this year.
Yeah, they did it, 6 or 8 months later?
Like May and then to September, I think.
Yeah, not even that long, yeah.
May,
4
October.
months.
April, October.
6 months.
Sorry.
Any more changes?
But no, but I mean, that was that was
Rene,
an interesting thing.
Rene, I just dropped a box of toothpicks on the floor. I want you to tell me how many toothpicks there are without looking.
437. 337.
Definitely 437.
No, but I mean, that was a case where the chipset in that was just not good enough to sustain that product. And you can talk to game developers and everyone about it. It was harder to use than the iPad 2, which, because the Retina display pulled so much resources out of it. It didn't have the Lightning connector. They could have probably waited and just not released the iPad 3. But with the iPad 3 on the market, I think it was the best of bad decisions to put out the iPad 4 faster.
But why? Now that I've never heard that expressed before. Why did they have to put out the iPad 3 as opposed to waiting and making just the huge? People were expecting one more iPad at one point during the year. We all knew that Retina was certainly coming and certainly ready, given the panel orders that we'd seen. Why did Why did they maybe not have an option, but to ship a reasonably underpowered version of a much better thing that was going to be happening 6 months later?
Oh, I think they did. I think, if they knew then what they knew now, they probably would have just waited and done it in the fall with the iPad 4. I don't know if they understood the full extent of the Retina tax that they would be paying with that device when they shipped it, because its internal testing is way different than a million people hitting that device. And they probably learned a good lesson from that.
Yeah. Okay. I would agree with learned a good lesson. I'd be surprised if they weren't aware. They didn't have a game plan that told them, here is when we know that this is going to produce some problems. We're going to ship this because we do feel this is a very strong, solid product. But we know when the iPad 4 is going to be ready. It's interesting. I don't have any conclusions to draw. I think that the iPad 3 is, when we look back 10 years later, is going to be an interesting case study in how Apple makes its decisions.
I did not upgrade
the antenna
to the 4.
too, right? Like the 4S has the Verizon iPhone 4 had a way better antenna than the iPhone 4. That was just a learned lesson that cost.
Oh, and the iPhone 4. I mean, I think that was colored itself. I think that was colored with some of the old Apple arrogance, because there's no way they couldn't have known what was going to happen when these things were released. But it's a new Apple, and it's, as I said, I don't draw any conclusions, but I do think that when we have access to more information 10 years from now, I think that we'll be able to point to the iPad 3 and learn a lot about how Apple developed hardware at that point.
Only the most hardcore fanboy would ever say Apple doesn't make mistakes. They make lots of mistakes.
Oh yeah,
and I think that it's fair to say that the 3 probably. Well, see, I have a 3. I skipped the 4 because I, unlike many, did not have a problem. Did not feel like the 3 was slow.
It was fine for everyday use. If you were a hardcore gamer, you did other. There was very specific
fine
things.
For me. So I literally did not upgrade, but that was because it was a 6-month time frame.
Yeah. It's just, I think that this is a great, given the multitude of changes that we've seen in Apple over the past year and a half, 2 years, I think it's time to make sure that we revisit everything that we think is canonical about how Apple operates. And I do think that Apple will definitely delay, Apple will not ship something until it's perfect, until it fits into their scheme. That is certainly a goal, I think, but I think there's enough counterexamples over the past 3 years to say that they don't ship crap, but they're willing to say, okay, well, you know what? Let's ship it. Let's all get the first good night's sleep we've gotten in 8 months, and then come back to work on Monday and really attack the finer points of this problem.
We have in the Brick House 2 exactly diametric views. Patrick Delahanty, like me, said, I didn't upgrade from a 3 to a 4 because I didn't have the money to spend on yet another iPad so soon. Jeff Needles said, I went from, and oh, by the way, I'll add another reason I didn't upgrade, because I wanted to keep my 30-pin cables. I didn't want to have to buy all new cables. Jeff Needles says, I went from the 3 to the 4 so I could get Lightning. That's a fanboy. I was so excited about Lightning. I immediately, 6 months later, I'm getting.
I wouldn't say fanboy. Some of us have more resources than others.
Well, that's true.
That's not an insult whatsoever.
No.
I mean,
I could afford it, and I didn't do it on principle.
For the first time in my life, I bought a new MacBook, even though I had a perfectly good MacBook. From the 15-inch from 2011 to the 13-inch Retina, and certainly if I did not have some, I could justify it by saying, oh well, there's so many hardware features that are tied to the operating system now that I can't test out and I can't benefit from. Okay, well I know that normally I wait for me to spill a beverage into the keyboard and cause sparks to shoot out, but yes, I will have for the first time in my life, I'll have two perfectly good working MacBooks. So I don't insult that. But yeah, there are a lot of people that really do have to make that decision. That the iPad 3 a lot of people upgraded from the iPad 1 to the iPad 3. They felt a little bit minus when the iPad 4 came out 5 or 6 months from now, but certainly not so minus that they were going to spend another $500, $600, $700, $800 to replace a piece of hardware that was perfectly good.
Perfectly good. That was
unless you needed better GPU or you needed the extra LTE bands, you were fine.
I bought Sarah the 4 because we're doing iPad today, and somebody should have the 4. And then I wanted to represent those of us who were pissed. And I stuck with my 3, darn it.
You'd much rather have the iPad 3 and a spiteful attitude than the iPad 4 and be perfectly happy with Apple.
Holding on to my
resentments. This year we're going to get an iPad Air with Touch ID, and people who bought the iPad Air last year without Touch ID are going to go, do I want Touch ID that badly?
Yeah. They're going to have to prove. They're going to have to prove that Touch ID is.
Well, you start using 1Password with iOS 8 and Touch ID, and Steve Gibson was talking about this last week, when you start having the Touch ID API and it hooks into everything, and suddenly all your apps are just one thumbprint away. I mean,
do we know yet which apps will do that? Has 1Password announced they're going to do that?
1Password has shown the demo, and if you're on their beta and you have iOS 8, you can use it now, and it's transformative.
So if my bank does it, or I use LastPass, but. Yeah, no, you're right. That's what I kind of mean. It's not really up to Apple to demonstrate it. It's up to all the developers to demonstrate use, besides just unlocking the screen faster.
And that is something that demonstrates exactly why when you invest in Apple, boy, does it pay off over the life of that product. Right. Because Touch ID, as released with the iPhone 5S with iOS 7, it's nice. Unlocking a phone, it's a pain in the butt. Having been able to do it with a touch, that's nice. But Apple themselves knew that, well, we're working on extensibility. We're working on iOS 8. Once we have the ability to let people write third-party software that simply says every time you need to sign into anything, touch this and it will work, that's what gets people to say, why do any other companies make tablets again? Do they have this feature? No. So why are they shipping a phone or tablet? I don't know why.
Let's take a break. When we come back, the Beats acquisition is final. So we'll talk about that. Andy Ihnatko's here from the Chicago Sun-Times. Rene, Ritchie from imore.com. We're talking Apple, Mac, and more. Our show today brought to you by the good people at IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. If you're an IT professional or you want to be an IT professional, I'm sure you know the certifications are a big part of getting a job. I interviewed Kevin Rose yesterday on Triangulation. Was stunned to learn that in high school he got his A+ certification. And, of course, he started working as an IT guy because of it. He also has Novell certifications. I was blown away. This is a smart guy. And, of course, there are ways and ways to get your cert. You're going to have to take a test, but you're also going to have to study for it. And you can go to a technical college at, sometimes very great expense. You can buy expensive study materials. But I like the fun, easy, affordable way. It's IT Pro TV. If you visit itpro.tv/MacBreak, you can take a look at what they've got. They've got free courses, so you can get a guided tour, sample episodes. Then you might want to look at all the classes. They do have Apple classes now. Integration Basics for 10.9, Management Basics 10.9, Mac Service Certification, OS 10 Troubleshooting, both coming in the fourth quarter. So they're really expanding their offerings. They have, of course, A+, Net+, Security+, CASP, Strata. They've got the Microsoft certification, Cisco. These new security certs are really cool. The ISC Squared, the SSCP, and the CISSP. They've really, and what they do is they do it very much like we did Tech TV or we do Twit now. In fact, Tim and Don, the founders of itpro.tv, say they were inspired by what we did at Twit. There's that's Don. There's Tim. visiting, stealing everything I know. But I gladly showed him how to do it. And now they use the same. They use a TriCaster, same microphones. In fact, if you look at the set, it really looks very similar to what we do. And that makes it very enjoyable. You can watch it on your computer, your laptop, your tablet. Look, there's my bobblehead behind Don. You can also watch it on a Roku. They have a Roku app, which is really great. I know people who have it on just all day because it's by osmosis. They're learning this stuff. It's really great. Watch live and join the chat room just as we do, or watch the courses after the fact. You can even, if you get the yearly plan, download courses for watching offline. Now, here's the deal with IT Pro TV. It's $57 a month, $570 a year, but if you use our offer code, MacBreak30, you're going to get 30% off. That's not just for the first month or year, but forever. That means it's $40 a month or less than $400 for the entire year. A great way to get a great job. IT Pro TV. With that, you also get the free tests, the practice tests, which is great. That's worth $79. They've got a learning and management system to track your progress. They have virtual machines, so you can actually do all of this in a virtual machine, even if you don't have a server running. No hassle, easy cancellation. You're going to love it. These guys really have it right. IT Pro TV. Go to itpro.tv/MacBreak and use the code MacBreak30 to receive 30% off for the life of your subscription. And get a better job. IT Pro TV. Well, boy, I never thought I'd see this day. Apple welcomes Beats to the fold. The approval first was in the EU. They got U.S. approval last week, and they closed the deal. Beats Music and Beats Electronics now part of the family.
See, when you said I never thought I'd see this day, I thought you meant an Apple official webpage with white text on a black background.
That too,
because that shook me to my core.
That's the Beats color scheme, right? Red on black. You know, one of the things that's most interesting, I think, is that something went wrong. This is the Beats by Dre page.
CSS error.
CSS error. Let's reload that page. Akamai fail. One of the things that has happened already, Ian Rogers, the CEO of Beats, has taken over iTunes Radio, which is good because I think iTunes Radio is actually a very good thing, and it seems like nobody knows about it. Although Apple does claim a fairly large, like 6 million or 4 million, some big number for a user base.
Because it's part of iTunes, it's the blessing and the curse that people who are heavy into iTunes will use it, but people who don't use iTunes won't even notice that it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could see it broken down between people who actually actively use it the way that they would use Spotify, and the people who take a look at it, launch it once, and say, "Well, why do I want this? I've got Spotify."
Right.
It's like Gmail and Google Plus.
Yeah.
They're going to keep the Beats brand, right? But they'll start selling Beats headphones in the Apple Store and online. They'll, I presume, start offering Beats Music in some form or fashion. Will they at some point fold that into what they're doing?
It's hard because, I mean, they've been selling Beats in Apple stores for a while, and the Beats app is on iOS and Android and Windows Phone, and I think they've said they're going to continue that, which means it probably needs to be kept at least somewhat separate, at least for those platforms.
Yeah.
It's possible that they might treat the Beats name the same way they used to treat iPod, where there's such this close association with music with this brand that they don't want to dilute it, they don't want to change it, they don't want to try to make the quote old unhip square hard drive box iPod, make that name into the thing that we try to get young people interested in. And it's possible they're just going to keep the Beats name and make that so intrinsically connected to Apple that we assume that consumer music gadgets is always Beats, and the consumer music gadgets that run apps are always Apple brand.
There were 95 Mac reported there would be layoffs. Beats and Apple said no. There have been no layoffs except for about 5 performance-based terminations. However, and all employees have been offered full-time jobs at Apple. However, a number of Beats employees were informed their positions could be subject to elimination in 3 months to a year. I would guess that's like the HR department, redundant business.
But yeah, absolutely.
Stuff. Yeah. But everybody has apparently got a job, at least for now, which is unusual.
You'll have enough time to get the discount at the Apple Store, but you use that by the end of the year.
Get your company store purchases done now.
Yeah,
get those T-shirts while you can.
But Jimmy and Dre are taken care of at least.
They've got an office. I wonder how much you're going to see them around the campus, really. They've got other stuff to do.
I think Ivan particularly can do a lot of his stuff by phone. Phone negotiations and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's down in L.A. You want somebody down like Ivan down in L.A. doing the contracts and stuff, right?
I think I'm curious to see. I think Ivan seems like as though he's basically jumped off the horses he was on last year and jumped on Apple horses, even if he's running them in LA. I'm wondering how much day-to-day Dre is going to be doing, because he's got to he's still a producer. He's a music guy, and Apple doesn't. Yeah, Apple sells music, but Apple doesn't make music
yet.
Wow. I don't think I just have to think.
We decided
the absorbing beats is not going to change Apple in any substantive way.
We fixed melodic interference and created a better musical experience.
Wow.
We've cleaned up the marketplace to reduce confusion of so many options down to one good song, one better song, and one best song.
And of course, they'll sound best in Beats headphones. Part of this was also buying. I didn't realize this. Vivendi, I think that's the Universal Music Group. It's one of the big record companies. Owned 14% stake in Beats. So Apple had to fork over another $404 million chump change to buy them out. So
that's all your phone profits right there again. No, you don't see Xiaomi buying Beats.
Well, the nice thing about this, they're Paris-based. So this is $404 million in funny money, European money, tax-free.
Move from Ireland to France, and you're good.
No big deal. Do you guys see really any change in the way Apple does music or anything because of Beats?
I'd say so. Certainly in the way they handle streaming. Beats was a very, very small product, but it had a reason to exist, as opposed to iTunes Radio, which is a fine product, but it doesn't really distinguish itself other than simply being something that's pre-installed on every single iPhone that comes out there. I'm also interested to see what changes come to the iTunes store when you have just a powerhouse executive in the music industry that can cut these super deals. Right. So he has business firepower, but he also has creative firepower. So I'm curious to see if he has the ability to dangle some carrots in front of superstar acts to say, guess what? Here's the terms we can offer you if you agree to be iTunes exclusive for the first year of your act.
That was something Steve Jobs did. Really, I mean, he went to the Rolling Stones in person. He went to the Holdouts in person, and he was
after the Beatles for years.
Yeah. He had star power.
And they did that Beyonce deal. I think it was last year, where they basically took over the entire store for a while.
Yeah. So and expect more of that. Could we be looking forward to a year from now? Suddenly, a new channel appears on your Apple TV that is the Beyonce channel. That's only there for 2 weeks, but it's there so that promotion of this album and all the videos associated with it is just front and center on an equal footing with Hulu Plus for that 2-week period. I think that we could see some really interesting things happening because of that.
I'd rather see a Weird Al channel, but that's just me.
I would pay for a Weird Al channel.
Just eat it.
People think that Weird Al stole that idea
version of Albuquerque
from Beyonce because she released all her, suddenly an album is out and 8 videos and boom, boom, boom. But Weird Al did it in 2011. I just want to remind everybody. He invented the massive marketing push. Apple, speaking of Akamai, Apple has been using Akamai for media delivery. Apparently, they've created, and it's their own CDN, and this is based on detective work. Dan Rayburn, we've had him on Twit before. He's an expert in streaming media. He writes a streaming media blog and is an analyst at Frost & Sullivan. Said by looking at the trace routes on OS 10 downloads, you can see they now come instead of from Akamai, from Apple's own content delivery network, AAPLIMG.com.
Apple Image?
AppleImage.com. From ISPs I've spoken with, Dan writes, they tell me Apple's put a massive amount of capacity in place, with many saying Apple has more than 10 times the capacity they're using today all ready to go. Is this a business for Apple, or is this merely about improving the consumer experience?
Yes.
Consumer experience, I think.
Yes.
That's their business.
Right. So it is business. Dan says Apple still uses Akamai for iTunes and Level 3 for iRadio. and app downloads, but he expects over time that'll all be moved over to Apple's own content delivery network. So for those who don't know what a CDN is, we use CDNs. Everybody does. Ours is CacheFly. You've heard us talk about that at the beginning of every show. The idea of a content distribution network is instead of having one server in Cupertino or North Carolina or Petaluma that all the stuff comes from, they have many, many servers. There's one, so they can be geographically nearby. That does make a difference on the internet, believe it or not. Closer is better. And those servers have a special caching system that makes sure that they all carry the same content. So for us, when we upload audio or video of a show to CacheFly, then they replicate it to servers all over the world. And when you download it, you're downloading it from a CacheFly server that's geographically proximate to you. And Apple's, I presume, going to do the same thing. It's not just North Carolina. They have to have servers in a lot of places.
Yeah, they're building it out. But this is part of controlling your stack. And we've seen them do this with, they own the kernel on this stuff. They're making their own chipsets. They're making their own programming language now. And as much, and I've said this before, as much as we complain about Apple being way too controlling, often our biggest complaints are, my carrier network sucks, or that UPS delivery took too long, or why is my iTunes timing out? Why is Netflix stuttering?
That's important.
Yeah, they want to make sure that when they deliver, and we've had that too, like people would complain, oh, it's taking forever to download the iOS 8 update. They want to make sure that you have a great experience. It's the same as opening a box to them. It's part of the unboxing of their software and content experience.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
And it's not, of course, they pay Akamai a lot. So it's been expensive all along. One of the reasons Apple always said we don't make money on iTunes, even with 30%, is most of that money goes to Akamai.
And again, 1+1 is not doing a content delivery network, because they're not building that into the price of their devices.
It was Dan who told me that when the best place to watch Netflix, until they made deals with all the ISPs, in particular your ISP, was on Apple TV, because Apple served the Netflix movies and video from its own content delivery network, not over the public internet. So Apple TV always had better Netflix.
Yeah, or they paid specifically for it in areas that they didn't serve it directly. Right. Yeah, they spent a lot of time on that experience.
Is that noticeable? Have you noticed that Apple TV is better for some of this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I switch between Roku and Apple TV pretty much on a daily basis, depending on what I want to run. And I will say that there are a few, I spend less time on the Roku moving from one app to another, looking at the spinning, waiting or invalidating or stuff like that. But I almost never see a stutter in playback or a caching sort of delay on the Apple TV. And it's that routing you talk about that sells that feature. And
by the way, in the net neutrality conversation, we've talked a lot about these interconnects between Comcast, for instance, and Level 3. Back in May, Dan wrote that Apple was negotiating paid interconnects with some of the biggest ISPs in the U.S. He said he wouldn't say which ISPs, but I think you probably in your head can name them. Yeah. And that's also really good. It means you're not going to see these wars between, Comcast and Apple, for instance, saying, well, you're not giving us enough bandwidth. They've got the interconnects set up.
I can throw money at their problems.
Yeah.
Boy, at some point you start to eat up all your profits. So, I mean, you really, I agree. Wonderful. Make a great experience for your users. I guess they must have a lot of margin.
That's what, that their entire business is predicated on having that extra money to do all these extra things, which is why I say you can't look exactly at the cost and margin ratio on two different phones, because that's only part of what Apple's providing.
Okay, that was right. And the call back to an earlier conversation. Yeah.
And the dance for Apple is always going to be making sure that you're spending their money improving the experience in ways that users can really touch and appreciate, as opposed to conceptual things that just get them to buy the next thing or upgrade to the next service. So things like making sure that their version of Netflix is the one that never stutters, that's money well spent.
Presumably, I would guess Amazon's doing the same thing. Somebody in the chat room said his Fire TV beats his Apple TV.
I agree with that in a lot of ways. Roku is the only one I've actually got 4 different streaming devices on the big TV in my living room, because I keep having to try different things with every one.
Well, no one of them does everything.
Well, also, the Fire TV, the Fire TV is probably the nicest experience overall. The Apple TV is the most consistent and fastest experience. The Roku is the most broad experience, where things that I have in my house, I'd love to be enhanced through the use of this thing.
Yeah.
That's mostly for
look
Roku.
at IT Pro TV as an example. They're not. They're
exactly.
on Roku. We're on Roku. We're not on.
And the Chromecast over the past year has, man, it's like I'm continually amazed by how much this little $35 thing that is completely invisible can do. Yeah. They keep making improvement. They keep broadening the number of apps on mobile devices that can exploit it. They've also greatly improved the way that YouTube interacts with it, so much so that I use the Chromecast link for almost all of my YouTube viewing, even if I'm on Apple TV. The reason why I don't leave it on Apple TV is because it's so much easier through the YouTube app on the Roku or Chromecast to simply be looking at a link on my laptop and then saying, "Oh, this is nice." Okay, so they actually are going to be spending 10 hours building Star Wars Lego models in real time. I don't think I want that to be on my laptop, but I'm
great to have on your big screen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's because that at hour 8 they're going to start hitting each other and biting each other. I want that in the full HD experience. But in terms of, I've got something on on YouTube on this screen, I want it to happen on that screen. It still happens on the YouTube apps that are on these other machines and not on Apple TV.
I was watching chat. I was watching you on my 70-inch Panasonic Viera last night.
What?
Yeah. Through a Chromecast. I was watching Reddit Up.
Oh yeah.
And it did I have to say, it really looked good. And thanks to Mark Hansen, who does, this is a third-party developer who does, it's TwitCast for Android. I don't know if he does it for iOS, but it's sure great. You launch it and you can watch, you can watch stored shows like Reddit Up, but you can watch a live stream too. Yeah. And that really it works nice. And we aren't using a CD yet. It works pretty good. Of course, there's only 12 people watching, so.
Isn't that a big challenge to Apple and everybody else that tries to perfect the experience by giving us channels and giving us original programming? I had a weird experience the other day because for the first time, I sat down and I actually found myself thinking as I picked up the Roku remote, I wonder what's on YouTube now. Wow. Just the same way I used to think, I wonder what's on Turner Classic Movies right now, because there's so much great content coming through.
For a long time, Roku did not have YouTube.
Yeah, that was late in coming, and I think that they have one of the best experiences possible now.
Really?
Yeah, it works so well. It's so intuitive. Yeah, and part of it is that I have such respect for people who have to design such a caveman level consumer object, because I find the reason why I usually keep my input pointed to the Roku is that the Roku has the best remote. It fills the hand nicely. The buttons are easy to find. There's never any ambiguity about what these buttons do. With Apple TV, it's a stick of gum that step one to pause something is to find the damn remote.
I lose that remote every single
time. And there's so few buttons on it that, oh man, so do I long press this and oh no, but I just stopped. Damn it.
Whereas I do the same thing.
And you have to aim it at the IR port as opposed to low power Wi-Fi on the Roku. And you could definitely make the case that the Apple TV is better engineered. You can definitely make the case that the software is a little bit that Apple's a little bit more on the ball and integrating stuff. It's certainly a lot easier to throw stuff off of my iPhone or my iPad onto it. But the fact that there's this really nice remote and this really nice YouTube app, and what I'm really connecting to is not a store or anything like that, but the same resource that every other thing wants to connect to. That's what makes this my favorite $99 streaming what's it.
It's also the case that you just forget that you have one. I mean, there's so many ways to watch YouTube as an example. It probably goes in trends. But
some of them stink. You know what breaks my heart every single time. It has to kill people inside of Apple. That if I have someone who works at Apple, like over at my house, I could not resist picking up the Apple TV remote silently, like clicking onto YouTube, then walking over and pointing at that little menu option in their YouTube app that says, "Show me the most recently uploaded videos to YouTube." Which made sense like 5 years ago when maybe 18 were being uploaded every single day. But which of the 8.1 million every second do I want to see right now? I put it to you that perhaps this is not the most useful thing to have as the top level feature, especially given that I have to click the button 5 times to get into my own personal subscriptions. I'm saying that this is overdue for a major update.
It is. And do you think we'll see one?
You do a great job. It's a great product.
September 9th?
No, this spring.
Probably not.
Spring.
Yeah.
But that's hardware. Can we have a software update, please?
Well, with the iOS 8 beta, the new version of the software was shown off, but I think so far it's mostly just the new look, like the iOS 7 look to the icons and things. They're putting so much effort into the new device software stack that I think we'll have to wait for that.
Okay. With an A8?
Well, right now it's a single core A5, so I mean, almost anything
would be better.
The bottleneck isn't the processor. The bottleneck is still
software.
Comcast. Yeah.
Oh, it's Comcast.
No, I mean you got to have that good connection, and that's what delivers the best experience right now. But yeah, I do agree the interface is a little bit sluggish.
Yeah. Our show today brought to you by our good friends at Squarespace. When I was talking to Kevin Rose yesterday, he said he did a foundation with the founder of Squarespace, Anthony Castellana, and he gave a tip of the hat to Twit. It's true. Twit and Squarespace, they go together like this. If you are a Squarespace user, you probably first heard about it on Twit. We've been talking about them for several years. What's great about Squarespace is to watch them not only do such a great job, but never let up. Continually get better and better and better. And this is good for you because it's not only is it web hosting, and web hosting, I guess, doesn't seem like it changes much. It does. There's it's very different now than it was just a few years ago. But it's also the software on top of it. And that, I'm sure everybody knows, has changed. The way websites work and look and feel. For a long time, you had to have a mobile site and a desktop site. Not anymore. With Squarespace, all the sites look great on all the possible screens. In fact, when you upload an image to your Squarespace website, Squarespace, behind the scenes, without your knowledge, makes 9 thumbnails, one for every possible size. 31-inch screen, 4-inch iPhone, and everywhere in between. It really does a nice job. Squarespace reflects your style, your look, your feel. It's not cookie-cutter sites. When you go to squarespace.com, in fact, just click the Get Started button. You don't have to have a credit card or anything. You just, try it for 2 weeks free. You'll get a sense of, the starting points. These are those beautiful designer templates. But what you might not see is behind the scenes, super clean code, state-of-the-art mobile responsive technologies. E-commerce is built into every template. You can click around and see what different people have done. Now, see, this is that new modern style of site where they scroll up like that. I love that. See, Squarespace can do that. It is state-of-the-art. And by the way, Squarespace sites never go down and very affordable. They start at $8 a month, and that includes a free domain name when you register for a year. So do me a favor, go to, and I won't even get started on the mobile apps, incredible mobile apps. So get started at Squarespace. Just go there and click the Get Started button, and you can try it. You can import your content. If you decide to buy, all I ask, just tell them you heard it on MacBreak. Use the offer code MacBreak, and they'll give you 10% off. And that way, Anthony will continue to tell everybody how great Twit is for Squarespace. Squarespace takes care of all the technical details so you can focus on what you do best, the content, the photography, the art, what you're selling, your e-commerce. Squarespace.com. Use the offer code MacBreak when you decide to buy. This is an interesting hire. Mark Gurman reporting in 9 to 5 Mac that Angela Arendts, the new head of retail who came over from Burberry, has hired Moussa Tariq, who worked at Burberry as social media chief. He's also worked at Nike. At Nike, he ran social media marketing as well as social media partnerships with athletes. So, he'd tell an athlete, okay, you got to tweet now. At Burberry, he led strategy and innovation for social media. He is, I am told, or Mark tells us, a confidant of Dame Arendts. So what will his role be, you think?
Also, his LinkedIn profile says he's a social media, quote, rock star, unquote.
Ooh.
But I mean, they really need him at Samsung to stop all those celebrities from tweeting from iPhones at Samsung sponsorships.
Maybe that's what he's been up to all this time here. Use this to tweet, kid. It works so much better.
I did, Leo, just as an aside, I decided to build some Lego Live while Andy watches.
Wow, the Death Star.
You can do both at once.
We have that.
I'm working on it now.
You're going to do the whole thing?
Yeah.
Jeff built that last year. Was that at our New Year's event? I can't remember. He built that for us last year, maybe for the GizWiz. And now it sits in my living room table.
I'm going to put it behind me.
Where Lisa's 11-year-old has been slowly dismantling it and adding figures from other franchises.
I'm going to get a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old to help me. And
yeah,
that should make
much more fun.
Yeah.
So is he just going to come in and be the social media guy? Is he going to be a marketing guy? He did confirm his role appropriately enough on his personal Twitter account. He tweeted, "First day of school. Hope the other kids like me," from Cupertino, California. That's cute. 8:38 a.m. Tariq, a little bit of a hint. You might want to get there earlier.
Apple famously has an incredibly small marketing team. Like people have said for years that Phil Schiller just never opened up the piggy bank for the marketing team. And it looks like they are getting more progressive with that. But in terms of social media, they have a few Twitter accounts, they have a few Facebook pages, but nothing to the level of a lot of other major brands, never mind consumer electronics. So someone with Burberry knowledge, someone with Nike knowledge probably could be a huge help with them, especially as things like celebrity selfies or whatnot become more important.
I wonder if the Twitter accounts that are like belong to like Schiller and Tim Cook, I wonder if those are now not necessarily subservient to his office, but at least part of the effort that he's launching in social media.
Tim, don't press send yet. Wait, Tim, don't.
Apparently he's had great success. Gurman says.
2 words, Anthony Weiner. Where is he now? Nowhere.
Nowhere. But his title is technically a digital marketing director. That can go in a lot of different ways. I mean, you could do what Comcast did and create, accounts to monitor and respond to unhappy customers.
Apple cares.
Apple cares.
And part of it is just simply using every single online service out there just as a new data stream of customer feedback, not just people who are tweeting directly at Apple, but to see where the conversations are going, what the velocity of those conversations are, and what if there are a whole bunch of people that are having problems with the iPhone 5 camera. Ever since iOS 7 came out, it's a long thread in the support forum. Just as an example, and right now Apple can think of it as a handful of people that are having a very unusual problem, but a social media director who is able to look at what's happening on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram about people complaining about it and notice that velocity is really picking up. It was a trickle when iOS 7 first came out. Now there's just lots and lots of constantly new people adding to this thread. That is information that they can then feed to engineers saying that this is not something that will handle on a user-by-user basis. This is now a problem that we're really going to have to attack and address right now.
Sentiment analysis.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways. He's very famous for using Twitter to preview. The campaign was called Tweet Walk back in 2011 to preview outfits from Burberry soon to hit the London Fashion Show runway.
There's a couple of things from this. I mean, famously, customer retention is much cheaper than customer acquisition. So anyone you can keep engaged and happy through social media is one more person you don't have to convert. But also, for a while now, Apple's getting much more savvy. In the old days, you could rely on people going to apple.com or itunes.com to find the stuff that they want. It was a pull-based system. But increasingly, for example, Flipboard, they started putting iBooks in there because that's where their customers were. So they're starting to push out their products. And social media is a huge surface area that they probably feel that they can better cover. For example, if they had deals on Twitter or they had collections on Pinterest or whatever he figures out, it's a way to get more eyeballs on your brand and your product.
They certainly could do a lot better. I mean, they really don't seem like they're very involved in social media.
Do almost nothing.
They do almost nothing. Tim Cook tweets, right?
Tim Cook, Angela Ahrens, Eddie Q, and Phil Schiller occasionally. They have a podcast account. They have a.
But the nice thing is that I think I'll compare my impressions with Rene's. That everything I've heard is that these are real, genuine tweets, as opposed to we've decided that now that the second week in August is a good time for Tim to say something about how nice the weather is. That they're not voracious tweeters, but that is actually that person expressing that sentiment.
Big win they could tweet about. Ford has ditched its Blackberries for iPhones.
Is that a win, Leo, or is it just mean at this point?
3,300 iPhones by the end of the year. That's, it's not insignificant. Over the next 2 years, 6,000 more employees will replace, according to Bloomberg, BlackBerry flip phones. So it was about time.
Well, I think that's more BlackBerry news than Apple news because, man, I think the last time that BlackBerry's senior staff was talking about where they want to go, broadly speaking, they were going more towards we're never going to have the sort of saturation we had before the iPhone came out, but we're going to be the best possible support and the best possible hardware for a class of users that aren't being supported well by Android or by iOS. And man, for them to lose the most businessy business there is in all the world of business, dear. That's more worrying than the. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the BlackBerry Passport didn't hold them down.
No. Big story. breaking story and some hand-wringing going on about OS 10, Yosemite 10.9.5. They're changing the gatekeeper app signing rules.
Yeah.
And will you explain this, Rene Ritchie?
So there's 3 ways that you can get apps on OS 10, and it changed over the last couple of years. Previously, you just installed them willy-nilly any way you wanted. Now you have the option of locking it to the App Store if you want to make sure that only Apple-approved apps ever touch your precious machine, or you can insist that they're at least signed by a certified Apple developer, so that you don't have to get them from the App Store, but they come with the knowledge that that person is accountable for that app.
And that's the default setting. That's what I use.
Yes.
So I can't install unsigned apps, but without overriding it. But
you have to do an explicit user action like an alt.
It's not a big deal, but you can. Yeah. But you right-click, say open, and it opens it. But
it stops you unintentionally downloading something malicious.
So, and I think I think this is a good thing and a very good setting. It's kind of a perfect way of keeping people safe, and it is, I believe, the default that you can either get it from the App Store or it has to be signed. The new rule is that it has to be signed by a version of OS 10, 10.9 or greater.
I don't know this for sure, but the scuttlebutt I heard yesterday when this came out is that maybe the signage previously wasn't as good, or they found a better way to do it, or there might have been some vulnerability in it. And I don't want to start rumors based on that, but it sounds like this is just a better, more solid way of signing it. And they've been encouraging people to go to it for a while now, and it doesn't seem that onerous. No. I mean, if developers have stopped developing an app, maybe it's annoying to have to go back and do it. But it looks like it's a very small amount of work, and it provides a better protection.
Sarah and I were talking about this on iPad Today yesterday, that the vast number of kind of abandoned apps in the store, not so much on the Mac, but on certainly on iOS. Yeah. Maybe this is one way of kind of cleaning out the cruft. You can't use it if it's not signed recently. You have,
and that's going to happen.
It's a version 2 signature, so they must have changed the signatures.
And that's going to happen as people discover more vulnerabilities, as cryptography improves, as the system changes significantly enough to require maybe there's more permissions available now, and those weren't accounted for in the original model.
You're right. This doesn't seem onerous. I'm looking at Apple's note to developers. If your team is using an older version of OS 10, pre-10.9, to build your code, just re-sign the app using OS 10 version 10.9 or later, and you just use the code sign tool, and you'll have a version 2 signature. Apps signed with the version 2 signatures will still work on older versions of OS 10, so it's downward compatible. And if you're on the App Store, you have to resubmit your re-signed app as an update.
Yeah, and you probably have to update things anyway if you're still on the App Store.
Yeah.
I mean,
are there people?
Unless you have it.
Right? Are people like say, "Oh my God, it's breaking everything"? It's only in the developer previews, right?
The developer preview for Mavericks and for Yosemite.
Oh, Mavericks as well.
Well, at Mavericks, they always seed the next iterative update to developers before they see it to the general public. So
10.9 what is it, 4 or 5 now?
5, I think.
Will include this as well as Yosemite.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10.9.5.
I think that's my understanding.
Okay. No cause for concern yet.
No, this is part of the cost of doing business is maintain. Like if there was for example, a big security exploit and Apple had to patch something, as a developer, you might have to do something to your app as well. This is part of the normal process.
This is a really good solution, this gatekeeper. Mm-hmm. We should just be happy about it. Popcorn Time adds Apple TV support. I don't even know what that means. This is that app that everybody, that's kind of illegal, kind of quasi. It lets you watch torrents. Is that right? I don't know.
It lets you stream torrents.
Oh, Chad, you know. It's
fine. I won't tell you.
It lets you. Yeah. It lets you stream.
It lets you stream torrents just like you would Netflix or something like that.
And it was pulled off of the App Store, right?
Well, it's kind of a weird project because the main developers, I believe, have left it, and so the only things that have popped back up are they made it sort of open source.
Forked.
So it's super difficult to find a legitimate. Yeah. And maybe all the ones out there are, but every time.
Do I have to use a jailbroken iPhone to use it, or can I get it from the App Store?
No, I haven't used it.
Seems like Apple would not allow this.
Yeah, I haven't tried it on iOS.
AirPlay support is being added to the Windows release. Okay. Mac version out due next week. Linux version will follow shortly thereafter.
That's not. I mean, Apple is closed in a lot of ways, but if you can generate an AirPlay, you can play it to all Apple stuff. I mean, it's like if you make a web page, you can play it on any version. You can open it in any version of Safari.
This is a cool one. Many of us have broken our iPhone screens. My kids break them every few weeks. And usually you go to a third party down the street. There's a little iPhone repair kiosk. They're everywhere now. Apple says, we're going to do it too. They're going to begin. In fact, they probably will do it better because the 5Cs and 5Ss, I think because of the way the glass is glued, they don't seem to be good repairs.
They're easier. The 4 and the 4S, the back was really easy to replace because everything was forward mounted. The 5 and the 5S are front mounted, so the screen is actually much easier to replace than it was.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Well, Apple's going to do it itself. It'll be a little more for Apple.
Yeah.
So I've been paying like $90 for a new screen. Apple's going to charge about $150 per repair. That's less than the $269 to completely replace the phone.
And if you have Apple Care Plus, that price goes down.
Ah, good reason to get Apple Care Plus.
I think you get 3. Yeah, I think you get 3 repairs at a lower price or something like that.
This will happen August 4th, next Monday. And they have that special machine. We had a couple of Apple geniuses in the studio audience on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and they were there for training. And I said, "They're training you how to use the machines?" They said, "Yeah." So Apple stores have these weird gadget-y machines that do these specific things, like you put a phone in and it goes, puts a new screen on it.
Suction cups the iMac screen off of it.
Yeah. So that's good. So if you're willing to pay $50 more, I would, because you're going to get it's probably warranted and all of that, right?
And you're absolutely certain it's a genuine part.
Right.
And there have been issues with parts not being that good when they're done on.
Right.
Some third-party manufacturers use fantastic parts, but you have to be knowledgeable enough to know the difference.
So I went. We talked last week or maybe the week before about the new MacBook Air ad with the stickers, and apparently it has generated huge sales surges in Apple's stickers. Now we used to get them from the first place I saw.
Jelliskins?
Jelliskins. I used to see them at Macworld every year. They had a beautiful booth. Apparently, they're not really doing that anymore.
What? Yeah, as a matter of fact, when I saw that, who was it on? Was it Dave Hamilton, or who was it who basically decided to track down every single one of those stickers?
I think it was
Apple's did it now.
Maybe.
Okay, you're right. I was, I couldn't help but notice that most of the links went to Etsy, which to me indicates that perhaps these aren't actually licensed from DC Comics and Fox and that sort of thing. And so I was trying to. It really did put me in a reflective mode of thinking: would Apple not care that they are showing like rip-off, non-IP registered versions of trademark stuff?
I think they'd have to go. I think they'd have to register them.
No, so my understanding is that Apple made a lot of those themselves for that ad. Those aren't the one those aren't the exact ones that people are finding. Apple built a lot of those in-house for the ad. Apple.com/MacBook-Air/stickers. They have them all one by one, so you can go there and see them. And but we've all seen people with these stickers, right? Especially the versions of them.
Versions.
Yeah, but it's weird. I mean, the Snow White one is, as far as I could tell, legit, and it's licensed by Disney. I was able to find that page, but I was trying to find like the more obvious ones, like the Snoopy and Woodstock one, like the Wonder Woman one, and it's not that
they're
not suspicious. It's just that it was harder. I couldn't find the Scrat. I couldn't find so many of these, which really surprised me because I thought that something like the Homer Simpson one, that must be, you go to Simpsons.com, and you go to Fox.com, whatever store page, that's got to be a licensed thing. It's so nicely done and so specifically done. If they did it themselves, okay.
So apparently Jelliskins is now New Vango.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would you change your name? I don't know. They're now New Vango, and really it says more like build your art collection, art gallery and fine goods. It's a community for people passionate about great art. It's not what it used to be, I guess.
I.e., it's a lot easier just to have you commit the copyright violation than for us to commit the copyright violation.
I understand.
Well, you can there's a little link at the top for skins and cases that seems to have all the gallery art plastered on your iPhones.
Oh, okay.
But they don't have. At least when I checked a week ago or something, I didn't see many that had like the actual cutouts for the Apple logo. So it looked like
they don't.
Sort of generic.
No.
Yeah, they're not the same. But you're right. I found them on Etsy. Oh man, did I find them on Etsy?
And to be clear, I don't find this. I don't think this is a scandal of any kind. I just think there's so much about how business is transacted on a national or international ad like this that it makes me wonder, at what point did lawyers get involved to say that, okay, I know that you've put together this storyboard of what you would like to have. Here's how you would have to do it if you want to really put the Walter White hat and eyeglasses on it.
That's the one I want.
Yeah. Just like I was surprised and really pleased to find that whenever you have like a commercial that uses like a Barbie or G.I. Joe type of doll, it's clearly supposed to be a Barbie, clearly supposed to be a G.I. Joe. Not only is it a unique art, but usually what they do is they actually will hire a specific model and make a model that is at least nominally looks like this model that they hired, so that that's the only way to make it bulletproof from Mattel or anybody else. They can say, no, it's not modeled after G.I. Joe. Look, here's Dave. It's modeled after Dave. You see, Dave has the eyebrows. Dave has the nose. Enjoy a piece of a bottle of water on your way out, sir, because we are bulletproof.
I do want to. I was thinking I should just buy like 100 of these, and every week I should have a different one.
I think it's interesting too. If you go to the MacBook Air site, unlike the iPhone ad sites where it tells you the apps with links and the accessories with links to buy, you can't.
Links.
Yeah.
It's up to you to find it.
I didn't get too far with this, but I would love for somebody to do like a definitive history of the Snow White and the Apple sticker, because this is our version of Calvin peeing on the Chevy logo.
Yes.
It's like it didn't exist, and then it was everywhere, and not just the licensed one, but knockoffs forever. I would love to, and that might be the sort of idea that was so clear that several people had it pretty much as soon as the Apple logo started glowing. But I would love to see someone do a definitive history of that, because there's somebody out there who first managed to get that into people's hands. And I think that person, I want to buy a cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee, or at least send them a $5 Dunkin' Donuts gift card. That was a cool idea.
I wonder if there's a variation in quality on these. I mean, the Jelliskins were on a special kind of 3M material you could remove and all of that. Here's one of the Etsy stores. This is decal on Etsy. And I doubt that they registered Ariel the Mermaid.
The master Disney license.
Yeah. But these are easy to make with cutout vinyl. So I would guess that the black ones are just vinyl cutouts, right?
Yeah.
Which means they might be a little tricksy to apply, because a lot of those things are just individual pieces. Like this one, if you bought this, you'd be spending a little bit of time.
That's after sales, Leo. That's your problem.
But it's only $10. They're a lot cheaper than the Jelliskins. Jelliskins used to be very expensive. That business has changed since I've looked. I want to get the Walter White hat, though. I really like that. Yeah. Do you think John, Paul, George, and Ringo are getting $1.50 for every one of these?
Yoko.
Oh, yeah, notice it doesn't say Beatles. It says Beaties. It's the Beaties.
That'll hold up in any court of law.
The Beaties?
It's a parody.
Who are the Beaties?
Warren and his wife.
Whoops.
No, I bet on the sticker sheet it's BEEITS. If someone wants to put those letters in out of order, we're horrified as you are, Beatles. But what can we do to stop that?
Ships worldwide from Beijing, and it's
home of the Apple computer and the Omega watch.
Yeah, it says, by the way, the materials are 3M, Avery, vinyl, decal, and sticker. Well, unless something's happened since I last checked, I don't think 3M and Avery are the same company.
If it was 3N, it'd be funnier.
3N. So buyer beware. But you know what? I think this is actually, I'm glad Apple's supported this by doing this ad. It's certainly helped the sales of all of these phony stickers.
If Apple had their act together, they'd have a whole section of the store. If Angela had gotten there earlier, they'd have a whole section of the store with stickers ready to go for ad day.
I wish. The Decal Guru is apparently the world's largest collection of MacBook decal stickers, and they have a lot of these. And I guess this is not Etsy, and they're not. Some of them are cheap, $5. Some of them are $12. All of them are less. Oh, look! You could turn. This would confuse everybody if I use this one. Turn your Apple into the Google logo. Is it a Chromebook? Is it a MacBook? What is it?
It's a gap book.
It's a gap book. Let's take a break. When we come back, your picks of the week, my friends. Actually, a couple of real quickie things before we... no, I guess that's it. No, we'll save the quickies for another time. Our show today brought to you by Hover.com, the place to go to register your domain names. When we first started using Hover, I transferred everything from I used several different registrars, transferred them all over. Hover makes that easy to do, by the way, with their concierge transfer service at no charge to you. The transfers are great, too, because for most domain names, you keep the time left on your registration, plus you get an additional year for $10. Hover is also great because that includes Whois domain privacy. All their registrations do. They know you want that. There isn't a 50-click upsell thing going on here. You go there, you get the domain name, you register it. You can add email to any of your domains. The domain management system is beautiful. Every domain includes unlimited domain forwarding, the Whois privacy, the fantastic domain management and DNS management tools that are very easy to use. They're not obscure. You can go in there, make the changes, including bulk management, which is great. And they have such a good support team. In fact, Hover takes pride in the fact that when you call their support team during business hours, a representative will answer, from Hover, who is empowered to help you to solve your problem. You will not get put on hold. You will not be transferred. You will not wait. There's a real person there waiting to help you. MacBreak, wait a minute. Oh, we could get macbreakweekly.net.org.info.
Quickly, Leo, quickly.
I got over that. I have hundreds of useless domain names now.
Yeah, that's $15 you're not going to get back again.
And never use. Take advantage of the Valet transfer service if you're on another domain registrar. Let them do this for you for free. They'll even handle the DNS settings and all of that, unlock the domains. A lot of registrars are kind of, they'll lock it down the minute you say, I'm going to move it. Hover's honest. They don't believe in heavy-handed upselling. They include everything you need with your domain, no more, no less. Also include custom email. You get a smart control panel, Whois privacy, and the best customer support around. Have I sold you on it? Go to
Canadian
Hover.
Heroes.
Huh?
Yeah.
The Canadian Heroes.
They're Canadian heroes. They're the Two Cows folks. Go to hover.com and use the offer code MBW8, because we're in August now, MBW8, and you will get 10% off your first domain purchase. So buy all those domain names you've been waiting to buy and get 10% off. Hover.com, MBW, and the number 8.
Another nice thing about Hover is that, unlike other registrars, if you're just sort of thinking about something and you're curious, gee, is this taken or not? There's other services I've used where I'll look at, orange screen of death justice.com, and it'll tell me, oh, orange screen of death justice.com is available. Then, okay, I'll think about it. Then I come back the next day, and it turns out that it's been parked by probably the service that now wants to charge me $180 for it.
Yeah, I won't say anything about that, but this is a known practice that's bit me too on some of those other guys, not Hover.
Yeah.
Hover's great.
Yeah, we love Hover. We love our Canadian friends. Speaking of which, from Montreal, from Quebec, Rene Ritchie.
Merci, Leo.
With our his pick of the week.
So my pick of the week is actually an Australian app. So I'm going to circumnavigate the globe for a minute. And it's an old favorite that has just been updated this morning, and that's iStat Menus. And
I love it.
It's terrific. It's gone to iStat Menus 5. Full disclosure, Mark Edwards, who runs Bajango and makes this app, is a good friend of mine. So we had Peter Cohen do the post for iMore, just to make sure that Peter gave it a thorough testing. I've always used it. I know so many people who use it. We all love it. It's got new features now for Mavericks and Yosemite, so it can do things like keep track of the battery shaming. You can use the dark mode in Yosemite to blend in with the menu.
Oh, that's nice.
It's just... Yeah, it is just, there's a list of improvements. There are some of them subtle, some of them profound. Bajango does a great job. You can't get it from the Mac App Store because this is not the kind of app that Apple wants in the Mac App Store, sadly, but you can get it directly from Bajango, and their customer service is excellent. Their apps are excellent. The design is beautiful. The functionality is just what you want. They have an iOS app that you can use to remotely monitor stuff as well. And I just, I have this running because I want to be able to sit in my living room and see what's happening to my Macs in the other rooms. And
didn't they used to, was this a dashboard widget originally?
They were originally iSlayer, and they made the iSlayer widgets, which included the iStat widgets, and then it moved to the menu.
Better in the
menu. It became Bajango. Yeah.
Better in the menu. And I imagine they'll start doing some notification stuff.
I really hope so. But Leo, I can only imagine what would happen if you hook this up to your new Mac Pro and you drop that list down, because I think it would look like NASA or NORAD.
I'll send you a screenshot. I'll tweet it. I'll tweet it when I get home. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
By the way, just to update on that Mac Pro, somebody's called it the Mac Tube. And I love it. It's working flawlessly. 4K screen, beautiful. I put MacBreak Yosemite on it. Loves it. Everybody's happy. Haven't had one problem. Not one.
Awesome.
Except that it has no CD burner. So I have to use the old Mac Pro to burn CDs.
What's a CD, Leo?
CDs. I make mixtapes for all the girls I meet.
Like the Guardians of the Galaxy mixtapes?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I made a tape for you. I hope you like it.
That's 347 mixtapes now.
Think of me when you listen to it. And Ihnatko, your pick of the week.
I bought myself a toy last week that I've been wanting to buy for a while. I bought myself a Raspberry Pi.
Oh!
And oh boy, are these things fun.
Pretty cool.
A lot of people are probably familiar with Arduino, which are these little like single board controllers so that you hook up to your Mac via USB and you load code onto them, and they can do things like throw lights, flip switches, control motors, stuff like this. This is sort of like to the second or third power. So this is a $35 computer, and it's not just a hobbyist thing for twirling motors. It is a $35 computer, and if you want to just put code on it and put your own hardware on here so it's controlling lights or controlling a robot or wiring up making your toys do really fun and interesting things, you can do that. But this also has 4 USB ports. It also has an Ethernet connector built into it. It has a full-sized HDMI connector over here. It has a full-size stereo audio connector that also does composite video, and it has a micro SD slot for storage. So really, if you want to use it as a hardware hacking platform, you can do that. However, if you want to simply plug in a mouse and a keyboard and a screen on this and use it as a Linux computer that can run LibreOffice or in a browser and stuff like that, you can also do that. If you want to use it as a prototyping board, you can do that. If you want to put it into a $8 plastic case that's designed for it and turn it into a standalone XBMC media player, the software that runs that is as good as almost anything else that I've got plugged into any HDMI port that I've got on my big screen TV. I love it because you can program it with Python and a couple other different languages. It really is the first computer I've bought. I've had since I was a teen that really brought back what I loved about computers as a kid, where I feel like I own this computer. I know everything there is to know about it. I can build things for it. I can write things for it, as opposed to I can sort of write an app for it with lots of really wonderful APIs, but with the permission of the company that makes this thing, I can do that. No. There are many computers like this, but this computer is mine. And the other thing is that I love the fact that it really is so versatile. I also have I've been using Arduinos for a good long time, but it's only good for certain types of hobby projects. This, again, if I want it to be a word process, if I want a word process on it all week, I can use it as a computer. If I can put it into my Darth Vader electronic bank to have it respond to things via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, once I put the right transponders into those USB ports, I can do that. But pull it, and then when I travel, I can pull it out of the Darth Vader bank, put it into this little case, and then take it with me and when I travel, so that when I hit my hotel room, I can just plug this thing into my into the HDMI port of whatever TV's in my hotel room. And because, again, standard USB ports, I've got like my 64 gigabyte little data traveler thing that has lots of movies and TV shows on it. And now I can simply, without having to bother with carrying an Apple TV and linking it up with Wi-Fi and this, that, and the other, I can just simply have a VCR traveling with me that just simply has about 20 hours worth of high definition video on it. And then when I come back home again, I pull out the Wi-Fi, pull out the data storage thing, and then put it right back and have it controlling my my Darth Vader bank via Wi-Fi and the internet. So it's so much fun. It's $35, 35 damn stinking bucks. You're not going to get a better bargain than that. And once you have this around, every time you think about, gee, I'd love to tinker with electronics, well, guess what? You can probably do it with this. Or anytime you got a programming project, guess what? You can probably do it with this. And the last thing to encourage you to actually buy one of these things is that there is such a powerful and potent community of people who've been messing around with these for the past year or two. And so pretty much you almost never have to build anything yourself. If you want to figure out how do I flip on the switch of this electronic toy with this device, there will be a tutorial that tells you, well, you'll probably want to do this with a power MOSFET. Here's how to wire that up into these little pins, and here's the script you want to write in order to do that. Here's how to write a script so that it will automatically tweet out the temperature to your Twitter account based on its built-in sensor. You can just simply go out and get the Lego bits of all the different pieces of code and pieces of electronics that you want, and then build whatever you want. So much fun, and $35 damn dollars. Just go and get it.
It's really cool. Which one did you get?
I got the B+, which just came out a few weeks ago, and I think that's what really pulled the trigger, because the first version was sort of a proof of concept. It was originally designed so that probably the marquee thing for people, the reason why this was open source design was we need a really cheap computer for kids in classrooms, whether they want to learn how to program, learn how to develop electronics, or just surf the electronic courseware over the web or stuff like that. And so it was good, but you needed to add a whole bunch of stuff to it to make it really useful. Then they have the second version, which had only 2 USB ports so that you couldn't do, keyboard, mouse, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, storage all in one thing. It was also, this one is not only has those extra ports, but also it draws a lot less power. You can power it. It's powered from this standard micro USB port right over here. That's not data. That's just power. But this thing sips so little power that I can drive it from the little battery charger that I have for my phone. So if I want to, do something and make it completely portable, if I don't want to do something as complicated as develop like a whole power bus for all my electronics, I can just grab my phone charger, grab a USB cable, put that in the box. Great, it's portable.
You can get them at Radio Shack. So help Radio Shack out because they're about to go on. But you can also
see. I just feel like it's kind of mean to come in there and say, no, I really only want to buy this $35 thing that doesn't require a 2 year. I'm so sorry. Really, I am. But I did bring this can of only recently expired canned food. It's all pretty good.
And
who wants chili?
Did you get it at Adafruit? Did you get it at Amazon? Where'd you get yours?
I got it from. I actually bought it from Amazon, and they've all kinds. You can buy them as parts of kits too. So even if you don't want to even monkey with making any components whatsoever, you can buy add-on boards that deliver like the motor controllers and the server controllers. But mine was it's manufactured by a bunch of different places, and mine was manufactured by Element 14.
Yeah, that's the one.
Which is also a great source for more information on how to program for it, how to do things for it. I can't recommend it highly enough. And the other great thing is that they acknowledge that this is going to be the first time people have used a computer that needs to be set up before you can use it. And so there is this, you download a 1.2 gigabyte file called Noobs, Noobs, and you simply you unzip it, you copy the files onto a micro SD card, put it in there, connect it to a monitor, and boot it up, and it will show you, because the Noobs installation has, if you want this to be a Linux computer, here it is. If you want it to be a media server, click on this. 4 or 5 or 6 different distros are on that file, and you click it, you select what language, you select your time zone, click another button, and it will just simply configure this card to make this into whatever you want it to be. And I'm sorry, I'll stop. You can tell when I get enthusiastic about things, I tend to burble on. But the last thing I will say is that there's another thing I like is that this is all of the storage for it. So if I want, I can actually have like one card that makes this into a Linux computer, another card that is a media server, another card that's something else entirely. Goodness gracious, the fun that you're having with this. This really is like digital Legos. It's just a box with stuff on it, and then it responds to your imagination.
I feel like someday I'll retire, and then I can just retire with my Raspberry Pi and
I want to watch Andy live streaming all his
I know.
Raspberry Pi fun.
Adafruit is a really good resource for this Adafruit, adafruit.com. They have not only the Raspberry Pi, but a lot of add-on boards, cameras, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Plus, they do very good podcasts that describe this. We have a podcast all about, this is the Adafruit page, just for people watching the video. And you can see all of the modules you can add to this. It's really quite amazing. Yep. By the way, it's not XBMC anymore. They renamed it.
Yeah, they changed it to
terrible name, Kodi, the Kodi Entertainment Center. Just so you know, and another plug. We interviewed Eben Upton, the founder of Raspberry Pi. This was a couple of years ago, so it's a little out of date. on Triangulation 61. But he talks about the motivation for doing this and how it got together. And we have, I think, several know-how episodes on the Raspberry Pi with Father Robert. So lots of Raspberry Pi information here and elsewhere. It's really cool. Really, really
Awesome.
cool. My pick of the week is not yet out, but it has been announced for iPhone and iPad, BioShock 1. This is going to be a port from 2K Games. They haven't announced a price, but they do say it will be a premium product, not a freemium product. Thank you.
Yay.
Yay. And you'll be
Kardashian-free zone.
Kardashian-free zone. By the way, Kardashian is available on the desktop as well as iOS in case you like. BioShock was one of the great PC games of all time. I mean, love the whole ethos. You're underwater, and so it celebrates Ayn Rand's objectivism, and it's just very interesting and really a lot of fun to play. I look forward to this because this is pretty exciting, and this is a port from the creators at 2K UK. Don't know when, don't know where, don't know why, don't know how, don't know how much, but we do know it'll be iPad, iPhone, and
It's coming.
when it comes, you will see me playing it.
You won't see him here. You'll see him play.
Yeah, you won't see me here. I'll have disappeared. Thank you so much for being here. Rene Ritchie is at imore.com. That's where you catch all his great stuff, including the Debug podcast. Always a good listen.
Thank you.
Give us a plug. What do you got coming up on Debug?
On the next two debugs, we have Giant Space Cat, who did Revolution 60, and then we have Jim Ray, who was formerly of Mule Design. Vector tomorrow, though, which is a different show, we have Don Melton talking about team building and how he built the Safari team at Apple and why it's better to have people who are trustworthy and teachable than people who are necessarily just smart or experienced.
Awesome. And I do recommend the Marco Arment Debug. He talks about Overcast, his podcast app. You're doing great stuff. Really, really love your podcast. imore.com. It's great stuff also from Andy Ihnatko. He is a writer. What are you, the tech guy?
I am the tech columnist. I'm the hub of all tech knowledge at the Chicago Sun-Times, at the mighty Chicago Sun-Times.
The mighty Chicago Sun-Times. He also has a little blog, CWOB, the Celestial Waste of Bandwidth. You can catch his great stuff, Andy I, on the Flickr, ANDYI. And does a couple of shows for the 5x5 network, including Ihnatko's Almanac, where he gets to talk about all the stuff he doesn't get to talk about here, including Guardians of the Galaxy. You guys liked it?
Yeah.
I have not seen it yet, but
I am Groot. That's the saying of the month. I am Groot.
It applies to everything.
It apparently does. Yeah,
it was terrific.
We enjoyed it. Yeah. See, but I haven't read the comics, so I don't know.
I haven't seen it yet. Now, Rene, is there a small, compact, luminescent, glowing thing that they refuse to explain what the deal is with?
There are infinity gems everywhere, Andy.
Okay, I'm just saying that in every Marvel movie, there's the glowing thing that everyone seems to think is important, but no one seems to be able to explain it to the audience.
This whole movie is built around that.
They're building towards the Infinity Gauntlet, Andy. They have to get those stones.
And you know this because they explain this to you in the movie?
They do. Well, they don't mention the gauntlet.
No.
But no spoilers here, but I think there is a glowing lump of something.
It's a Marvel movie, so I know it's a glowing lump of something. I just don't know.
And I actually love the required appearance of Rocket's great in this, but the required appearance of Stan Lee in this,
yes,
in which he plays a lecherous old man with a young girl on his arm.
Huge stretch.
He's a sweetheart. I've met him several times, and he is the sweetest man you could ever want to meet.
You can tell he's sweet, but he's kind of laughing. He's laughing at himself a little bit now, which is fun.
I forget the movie, but he was in a Hefner jacket, I think, in one of the movies.
They're really playing up the lecherous old Stan Lee.
It was fun. What was the line from? Was it A Man for All Seasons? Like, to be 91, Stan Lee, and alive all at the same time.
Thanks for joining us. We do MacBreak Weekly each and every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. If you watch live, you will see things that you never saw before. But if you can't watch live, don't worry. Fear not, because we make on-demand audio and video available after the fact at twit.tv/MBW. And also on Stitcher and on our apps by our generous third-party developers. Everywhere podcasts are aggregated and performed. And today I'm going to let the closeout be handled by the great folks from the Clone Wars show. Are you getting my audio?
Okay, break time is over. Get back to work.
Get back to work. We'll see you next time on MacBreak Weekly. Bye-bye, everyone.